Hey everyone, it's Classic DM, and we're like once again going to be talking about combat and the fine details. Today's episode is going to be chill, area, and cone. So if you want to follow along with me like we did the other day, it's on page 456 or so of the CRB. And let's go ahead and jump right into it. Once again, we're using this fictitious situation that we've been using for the last couple of videos to talk about how some of the areas and the cone effect and the adjacencies of the different squares in the game. So you may remember in the previous episode where we talk about Emanate, we had our cleric move to here to cast Bless, and then we said this is probably the best place for them to be. We had a barbarian fighting a frost giant here. We had a rogue flanking. We had a monk on the side flank. That doesn't count as a flank in this game. And we had all hell breaking loose coming this way. So what we have here is not failure to communicate, but we have a problem because all the previous AD&D stuff I made, I used these 1.5 inch diameter fender washers to represent enemies. So when you buy miniatures, as you can tell, they're quite large. Now this is only a 15-foot tall giant, right? So if you put a 15-foot tall giant, let's put him like right here somewhere, right? He's really taken up a lot more room than just 1.5 inch squares. And to keep everything by the book in Pathfinder 2E, what we need to do with large creatures, which is giants like this, is we need to not use 1.5 inch diameter tokens, but use actual miniatures or larger tokens that represent a 10 foot by 10 foot block. So let's just do that right off the bat, okay? So this is something from AD&D that's changed for us because I think it's going to make everything work much cleaner. So we need this big boy in here. So what the good thing about that is we don't have people on half squares. So now what we have is this big frost giant taking up this 10 foot by 10 foot square because he's large. And we have our barbarian still at this corner here. We have our monk in the back right corner and our cleric over here. And then we have our rogue still flanking. Now, one thing you may remember from that last episode is I was talking pretty briefly about, there's no attack of opportunity for the frost giant. So one of his nastiest things he can do is he has two things that he can do, and one of them is going to cause a cone effect. Now, one would be wild swing, right? Which he swings and it hits two foes adjacent to each other. Now, we're not going to talk about that in too much detail, but if he had decided to turn this way and go for the rogue or go for the cleric or go for the monk, he would be able to hit two of them with one of his swings. And there's rules about that in the actual bestiary entry about the monsters. I am actually going to just hype a little bit. I love this about the bestiary. It's tactical abilities for the enemies. They're not just blocks of hit points and AC numbers anymore. So this is really cool. But this fool has chill breath. And let me read it to you if you don't have your bestiary. It's cold, evocation, and primal. The frost giant breathes out a 15-foot cone of freezing moisture. That sounds like a dog sneeze and a wet goat in the island of Crete. That quickly condenses into ice, dealing 4d6 cold damage. And that sounds really nasty. Each creature in the cone must attempt a DC 28 basic reflex save. And just like any kind of spell that has something that shoots at you, you get to use your dexterity-based reflex save to kind of move out of the way or take half damage. In this case, it also works. A creature that fails its save is immobilized, so you have to get a condition card for that. It means you can't move. It's like being rooted in EverQuest. And takes 2d6 cold damage at the end of each of its turn until they get free. And the escape DC, I mean, every turn comes around for you, you're going to try to escape the ice, you're going to try to pry yourself loose from the ice. You got a DC of 20, it's even harder. That is nasty. Remember, this guy's 150 hit points, okay? He's got an AC of 29, which isn't that high, but that's really, really nasty. Now, he can't use his chill breath ability as often, but once 1d4 turns, if you're the DM and you've got this guy running up to you and he does a chill breath attack, and he does it, 1d4 rounds, excuse me, not turns. I get my AD&D words mixed up sometimes. You can keep rolling a d4 and roll up a 1 and a 2 and a 1 and a 2. And this guy's going to be able to do this like every 12 seconds. Worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is you're going to have a frost giant. This isn't a frost giant show. We're going to get to the cone thing in a minute. That's what the main emphasis is. Pretty frequently. So with things that do cone attacks like dragons and breath weapons, you really, really, really need to have a good handle on how do the cones get determined with this jagged edge type grid system like we did. We talked about the burst effect. So let's flip open our CRB and take a look and see exactly how this works. Let's see what the definition of a cone is, first of all. So the cone shoots out from you in a quarter circle of the grid. Like if you were casting Cone of Cold, this, addressing you. When you aim the cone, the first square of that cone must share an edge with your space if you're aiming orthogonally, or it must touch a corner of your space if you're aiming diagonally. Now I got some more awesome WTF sketches for you that'll explain this orthogonal garbage if you've never done it before. So if you're large, well, guess who's large? This boy is large. Let's see what he looks like again with this really horrible paint job, right? There he is. He's smiling for the camera. He's like, yep, I'm large, dude. I'm going to kill you. So this guy here is large or larger. The first square can run along the edge of any square in your space. That's a really key point, and I've got a WTF sketch for that too. The cone extends out for a number of feet, widening as it goes, as shown in the area diagram. For instance, when a green dragon uses its breath weapon, it breathes a cone of poisonous gas that originates at the edge of one square of its space and affects a quarter circle area at 30 feet on each edge. If you make the cone originate from someone or something else, follow the same rules with the first square of the cone, using an edge or a corner of the creature or object space instead of your own. All right, so let's take a look at that quickly here. Just go up a little bit to the next page, previous page 456, where the diagrams are. So in the center here, I just move the mouse around so I highlight everything. Here's the description of two different types of cone layouts. One of them is called orthogonal. That means it's basically perpendicular, going 90 degrees, straight north, straight south, straight east, straight west, straight up and down. The other ones, it's like doing a vector diagram. Have you ever done any math in college and high school where you have a vector? If you have a force pushing off in the x-axis and a force pushing off in the y-axis, you got a resultant in the middle. That creates the diagonal. So when you have something that's a diagonal, it's trying to shoot across our square grid here diagonally. So I've got a WTF sketch to kind of show that too. Now the real trick is the size problem. Before we go any further, all right, let's go over the quick size problem thing that I mentioned before. So previously, I was using 1.5 inch diameter placeholder tokens, because I'm not a multimillionaire, to represent my monsters. So what that was doing was causing kind of a problem, okay? So you can see everyone looks cool. Everyone else is kind of sort of on a 1-inch grid, but this guy is actually sticking over a grid. So if you were to take a marker, right, and try to put him on an edge right here, you can see right away that this guy is, you know, whoops, that's a horrible tracing. This guy is already kind of sort of covering this up, right? So he's already kind of that big, but there's all this extra space in here, because he's not really a 10-foot diameter entity. So let's go take a look at what happens when you use 1.5 inch diameter things representing enemies. Because what you really need to do instead, to get rid of him, is you need something, it doesn't have to be miniature, but it needs to be almost a 2-inch diameter, right? All right, so we're going to move these kids out of the way real quick and pull up our WTF sketchboard because it's so useful, right? Which camera we want to get rid of? Our tabletop camera. Let's get rid of that. And we're going to move this out of the way here. And I'm going to slide all these poor hapless adventurers out of here, including the fool that started everything. All right, and get him out of the way. So let's talk about the problem first, and then we'll talk about the correct way to do it. And when we talk about the problem, we'll also talk about some things about the cones, right? So here's another one of our awesome patented, copyrighted, classic DM WTF sketches. So as you can see, when you use the 1.5 inch diameter tokens like I was, like these bad boys here to give you a sense of scale, they overlap. See this overlap happening over the grid? Now the characters are in being pushed off the grid. You have this little offset happening right here. That's kind of ruining all the mechanics. That won't fly in Pathfinder Second Edition. In AD&D, we can kind of wing it. In AD&D, we can do things like, it's a 20-foot radius. You seem like you're pretty much there. It's going to hit you. Like no one sits there and measures everything out. That game was written and designed way before people were really using miniatures on the 1-inch grid. So in our situation, looking at it from the angle you saw it before, this is the Frost Giant. This is the Barbarian, and he's facing her. This is the monk on the right flank. This is our cleric who ran up and did bless from our previous help episode. And this was the rogue flanking from behind. So if this guy decided to use his cone breath weapon, whatever the devil is called, stinking sneeze or some crap like that. What's it called? Icy chill breath? Let's get the book right here. It's called chill breath. One action. Turns this way and goes wham. So what happens? Let me just draw it for you in real time so you can actually see. Right, because it's kind of like a lot of chicken scratch going on. So it would come out from here and then extend out like this, right? And that's trying to simulate this diagonal here. Yeah, I really should be teaching geometry classes and make more money on the side. That would be a cool idea. So let's look back at the diagram here and see, do the diagram on the right while you look at this over here. So instead of that, like we said before, you're getting bonus area in this situation. You're not being ripped off like you are when you're doing the area effect like for a fireball. When you're using a burst kind of rips you off but pays you off in other areas. It ends up being the same actual area, But for cone, a 15-foot orthogonal cone, this is an orthogonal cone because everything's at 90-degree angles, you get a lot of bonus area. And so you actually get almost a complete 2 extra squares of effect that wouldn't normally get hit. So if that were to happen in this situation, this M here is representing the rogue. Obviously the rogue would get hit, but guess what? Our cleric, who kind of positioned himself absolutely perfectly for his bless spell, he doesn't get touched. And the monk doesn't get touched. And that's even using our wrong token size. All right? So this the rule here is overlap equals bad. Fail. So that's not good. So up here you can see in the corner we've drawn a little baby sketch to show what orthogonal is to kind of go along with our awesome math lesson. So you have a large creature. This is the size of a normal medium character, right? 1 inch. Large creature needs to take up 2 of these. So you got to have a large creature is considered taking up all that space. Now, their feet are probably really planted here and really planted here. It's this kind of business, right? You got this dude standing here. His feet are really on there like this, right? So he's not really standing there, but when he's got his legs bent, all that kind of stuff, it works out. So let's go see what the right solution is, because this is not right. Okay? Sad Rottweiler. Okay. So according to the rules as written, or whoever likes to say it that way, it should be like this, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Man, I'm getting dry erase marker everywhere, dude. So you have a large creature. Bam! Right? Large creature, large creature. Don't worry, I don't have some dime store dragon for 25 cents. Large creature. You're basically just going to say, you know, for the purposes of determining what can hit what, this guy needs to take up 10 by 10 square. So how does that affect the cone? Like, how can the cone possibly start here? Because in reality, you would think, well, he's going to do a breath weapon, right? Let's just put this guy here. This guy, you think his breath would come from here inside the center of his square and go out. Now, in some war games, like Black Powder and stuff like that, there are situations where you measure from the center of a square, like in hex-oriented games. A lot of hex-oriented games like Squad Leader and stuff like that, you'll have hexes that go like this, right? Can I even draw a hex anymore? Good Lord, I can't even remember. You'll measure from the center of the hex to the center of the hex, or if you do World of Greyhawk maps, all that kind of business. You don't do that in Pathfinder 2e or in D&D. What you have to do, you say, no, we have to stick within the boundaries. So in the video game industry, our characters have a bounding box, which is an invisible collision, so we can collide with other characters and collide with the world, make sure you don't get stuck in, sometimes with some clipping. When you play a Fortnite or a shooter, your gun, you should run up to a wall, and the gun shouldn't stick into the wall. They'll make a barrier there to prevent it from hitting, and you shouldn't be able to bump into geometry. So in this situation, what do? So this first one, option A, is if he were to turn and he wanted to smoke the rogue, he could choose the breath weapon to begin here. So that ends up being like this, okay? So he could have started over here. Like if there was somebody over here, he could have did that and encompassed that. But in this situation, all these marks here, this is where his chilling sneeze, or whatever the hell you want to call it. So the rogue gets nailed, but guess who doesn't get hit? The cleric doesn't get hit, so he's safe. That's a safe spot. Someone here, this is a safe spot. This is a safe spot. Obviously, the places looking the other way are safe spots too. What's option B? Option B, he's like, well, I'm going to try to get both the cleric and the monk and the rogue simultaneously. So I can turn this way, and I can do another one orthogonally this way. Well, no, you can't. Actually, here's what happens. Even if he goes all the way out to this edge and does another orthogonal one, it's still, the cleric is safe. This is a safe spot. The rogue isn't being hit. Only the monk is being hit. So if you were to do it diagonally, it becomes even trickier than that. But you can't do the diagonal one. If you do it, it comes from this point. And I got so much drawn on here, I'll be tempted to erase it and start over. But if you do the diagonal one, in fact, look up here where it says cone. You see here on the PDF where it says cone about right here? See that? Now look at this one directly below this. You see the little M for medium-sized creature? If you were to do it from here, guess what would happen? It would go like this, and then it would go like this, right? It only goes out 15 feet. So it's going to go out 15 feet to here, and to here, and then it's going to do some jagged monkey business, right? We need more guidelines here so we can make sure we draw this properly. So that's going to do this kind of jagged crap. So you're going to end up having chill breath happening all the way in this area here. Kind of looks like a stealth fighter from the United States Air Force. So guess who's going to get hit? The safe spot where our cleric is. So this spot gets hit. So that's an orthogonal projection. But notice how it comes from the tip. But you can't take that like in Warhammer 40K or something. You can't just take that thing and just rotate it wherever the devil you feel like. In fact, we'll just use Kira's character sheet, right? So we can't just take that and start it here and rotate it this way. We have to stay on the grid. That's a really, really key point. So even though common sense would tell you that surely this guy could turn and blow up all the kids laying on the battlefield, he actually can't. He can't do it at all. So some people don't like the metagaming aspect of things, but that's rules are written the way they are. It's the same thing for you. If you ran up and wanted to cast Cone of Cold on this guy, you couldn't do it either. You could do it only the way you could do it like he can. Sorry, I can't speak. So we have our barbarian. Now this dude he's going to turn around. Barbarians wallop him now from behind. We had our rogue here, which was flanking until this guy turned around. We had our monk here hitting on the side, and then we had our cleric in the blessed spot. So no matter what happens, and let's see if we can get our little chump table cam turned back on here. No matter what happens, everyone's going to be safe. Only one person's ever going to get hit. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? All right, videos, I'm trying to keep them short. I don't want to talk too much, but think about that. Tell me what you think in the comments. Does that seem right to you? How in the devil could you... It would make so much sense if he could just smoke all these guys, but you can't. The way the rules are written, he can't do that. The bounding box of the creature, in this case a large creature, is the edges where he can begin. He can't begin his Cone of Cold type chill breath effect from the inside of his... he can't start it from the inside of his occupied double squares. So because of that, there's no way for him orthogonally or diagonally to hit multiple targets at the same time. And with that being in mind, if you want to be a DM and you want to be a heartless bastard, you should use a wide swing instead. So think about those kind of things. Now, if you had people step back, like oh, I'm the druid and I'm coming to help, yay. Well, that's good. You could blow the druid up, and you can blow up this caster that hurt everyone. You can get her frozen in place and break both her legs. And the other guy in the back thinks he's going to flank and come around. Sure, you could do that and just blast this whole area and get multiple people hit. So think about it. So you want people bunched up at least one square away from you. It's like using a flamethrower in some war games. So that's it for today. And if you have any questions or comments, let me know. Hope you have fun with these types of videos. If you like these kind of shorter, fast, one subject ones, that's great. Give me the feedback. I'm trying to find the right rhythm between the really detailed stuff and stuff broken up into small pieces. So your feedback really helps. All right, now talk to you later. See ya.